This chapter begins at the Kyoto Future Science Lab. Here, Mino and Usami are talking about whether what they're about to do is right, taking action before the Ministry of Health, Labor, and Welfare has made a decision. Because according to Mino, what if these aliens are carrying foreign viruses that they don't know how to treat? But Usami disagrees, saying that if they treat the aliens that way, it's inevitable that the aliens will be offended and might have a violent reaction which could eventually lead to an all-out war. And that's not the only reason Usami wants to act first. It's also to prevent a massive reaction from Japan. He says it's better that only the two of them go as Earth's representatives rather than having a lot of other Japanese people go just to talk. And soon enough, the representatives from Simuria and these representatives from Japan finally met. This is where the two aliens were revealed. They didn't waste any time and immediately introduced themselves. One of the beings who looked like Master Tengen said his name was Jabaroma and that he served as the diplomatic envoy from Simuria. The other Simurian behind him was actually Maru's sibling. His name is Cross, the dispatch personnel from their clan. We can also see here, guys, that they are not hostile. They really have no intention of starting any trouble. In fact, Jabaroma even thanked the Earthlings for the very warm welcome they received. So in return, they promised to reciprocate this hospitality. But from this point, it was as if something suddenly crossed Usami's mind. Why do they know how to speak Japanese? But still, he couldn't let it show that he was starting to get suspicious. He acted completely normal and very friendly in front of these aliens, saying that it was no problem at all. He said that's really how visitors should be welcomed. While introducing himself as Usami, the elected interim minister of foreign affairs. And the subordinate with him was Mino. The two of them acted humble and showed no signs of nervousness. But deep inside, a thought crossed both their minds that by breaking this language barrier, the Simurians might gain an advantage. It didn't take long before Jabaroma suddenly made a request, saying that if possible, they would like to have one more representative present at this meeting. Usami and his group responded that it wasn't a problem. Naturally, it was fine for them to send any representative if they were just going to have a discussion. That's why Usami also asked Jabaroma if he had any concerns, because it seemed odd that he suddenly appeared hesitant to let the representative in. Jabaroma replied that actually they couldn't just assume that the person was unarmed or didn't have any weapons with them, as if to say that this representative they wanted to bring into the meeting wasn't a threat, the one they wanted to let in as their representative. At this point, Mino and Usami could feel the overwhelming aura of this representative. The two of them were chilled to the bone. So after that meeting, it was as if the two of them were extremely stressed out. They even wondered if they were just dreaming. Because if not, then the whole world was in an extremely dangerous situation. Because the truth is, guys, just from the aura of that representative Jabaroma mentioned earlier, he could easily destroy an entire nation if he wanted to. That's why Mino and Usami finally understood what a Sukuna-level threat really means. It's as if, during their meeting, Jabaroma and the Simurians were making it clear to them that they could conquer the entire world anytime they wanted. It is just a matter of whether the Earthlings will cooperate with them or not. That's not all. He also gave some conditions. And that condition, guys, is something we've seen being applied and adapted since Chapter 1. That is to allow the Simurian ambassadors to study and learn sorcery. And not only that, they also have to let those sorcerers be followed and monitored by the Simurians so they can learn how sorcerers work and what their nature is. According to Usami, to be honest, that's actually still pretty light. In fact, they could have asked for much heavier conditions from the Simurians, but this is all they gave them, something this light. This is when Usami started to make a new decision. He said he would give the job of handling and cooperating with the Simurian to the Okutsu siblings. Mino didn't immediately agree to this because even though those siblings are talented, they're still just kids. But there is a reason, guys, why Usami came up with that plan. Currently, as of now, these aliens aren't really hostile. So it's fine to have them accompany the kids since the Simurians don't have any intention of suddenly becoming violent either. That's not all. Because there are so many issues, guys, and so many controversial events happening. Ever since the paranormal resolution 62 years ago, Japan has faced countless threats. And now, with all these issues piling up, like the arrival of the aliens, a Sukuna-level threat, If this gets revealed to the public and a lot of people find out about it, there will be panic, especially from other nations that might immediately retaliate, and that would be dangerous. Because it could lead to an all-out war. Which is why, according to Usami, they need to avoid that at all costs. They absolutely cannot allow all of this to escalate into a devastating war, because that would cost countless lives. And there's a high chance that the Simurians could defeat them and take over the entire world. That's why Usami's plan is to use the children to soften the hearts of the Simurians and the aliens through the new generation, by showing how the children act, how good they are, and how it's possible to have a harmonious relationship between the aliens and the Earthlings. Because honestly, guys, they don't have a choice. They can't just drive the Simurians away, and it's not really an option for them to resort to war either. So the only choice left is to find a way to live on Earth together with the Simurians. And switching scenes, we're now getting to the Okutsu siblings, guys. Where Yuka doesn't believe a word of what Tsurugi is saying. She wonders why Tsurugi suddenly started thinking about aliens. So Tsurugi told her that the criminal confessed it to him. Another thing pushing Tsurugi's idea is that, according to him, the Jujutsu Tech headquarters has admitted and revealed that for the first time since the Ryomen Sukuna incident, there's been another incident involving a special grade level threat. So it's really not far-fetched that the arrival of aliens could be true. That's why this is where Yuka's anxiety began, because she knows that this is the enemy who caused the huge scar on her grandfather Yuta. And not only that, Tsurugi also explained that the two crimes being committed, specifically the human trafficking by criminals, are generating billions and billions of money. That's why they won't just stop their business unless the threat to their lives is real. That's why there's a high chance that the aliens are actually real. Not to mention, they both saw what Maru did. Yuka replied that there was actually no problem with Maru's third eye, because there are also many other sorcerers who can do this. But Tsurugi replied that it's not that simple. They noticed that there's something unusual about Maru's eye, and in fact, guys, this eye of his always has a band-aid on it, meaning he can't remove it. This isn't just caused by sorcery, rather it has something to do with his biological build. But the point here is that they won't be able to prove that. They were planning to ask Usami about it, but that would have been extremely rude. Because Usami was the one who presented and introduced Maru to them as the inspector for security treaty signatories. And they have no right, they're not in a position to ask private information about Maru. As for Yuka, if that's the case, why don't they just ask Maru directly? But Tsurugi didn't agree with that either because he doesn't trust Maru. And if Maru really is an alien, why would he just confess so easily? That's why Tsurugi was deep in thought until an idea came to him, to ask the criminal directly. So, without hesitation, the siblings went to the truck that would transport the criminal to his prison. They lied to Mino, saying they were just going to inspect because the criminal might be carrying explosives. But in reality, they interviewed him, asking the criminal what the truth was about the aliens he was referring to. There was a lot of information exchange between the two, and Yuka and Tsurugi even showed that they weren't hostile so that the criminal would cooperate. That's why the criminal ended up revealing all the information he knew, starting from how he obtained the information, which he said was due to technologies that caused a massive data breach, a data leak, through which he was able to get information about the Simurians. Here, Yuka was still skeptical and didn't quite believe it yet. So the criminal said if they themselves are sorcerers who use all sorts of absurd and strange kinds of magic, why can't they believe in aliens? But even with that simple statement, Tsurugi still wasn't convinced. So for this criminal, it would be better if they saw it for themselves with their own eyes. Here, the criminal clarified that there is a floating spaceship in Japan, and that spaceship contains 50,000 aliens, which means, guys, that thing is really, really huge. That's not something you can just easily hide in the sky. So according to this, there's also a high chance that, like the curtains, these Simurians are also using similar technologies. That's why they've been able to hide and conceal the visibility of their mothership, which, as we know, guys, is called the Nonax. Not only that, since people can't see it, there's also a high chance that the aliens themselves aren't coming down either. They have enough resources for now, but at some point, they'll run out and will need to get resources from Earth. And when that happens, the curtain they're using will disappear and wear down. According to this criminal as well, there will supposedly be a meeting at 8 p.m. the next day. That's why, in this situation, there's a high chance that even that curtain or the barrier technique they use to make Nonax invisible will be turned off. So even though it still can't be seen by the naked eye of ordinary people, for sorcerers, there's a high chance it will be visible once the veil is lowered. So if these two want to see it, they need to go to Mount Kurumayama, because that's where the mothership is located. After the conversation, Yuka wonders why the criminal seems so cooperative, which Tsurugi explains by saying that Yuka probably knows what heavy punishment awaits Jujutsu sorcerers who become criminals. It wasn't specified here, guys, but it's most likely the death penalty or maybe even something worse. That's why, when it comes to the higher-ups and others inside the Jujutsu headquarters, the criminal doesn't just speak carelessly. But with the two of them, he confessed because he's planning something even worse. He's planning to create a huge commotion by leaking that information, which would shake even Jujutsu tech. And through that, he'll be able to escape. The next day came and the two of them went to the Mount Kurumayama Highlands in Nagano Prefecture. Here, Yuka was wondering why they had to go all the way to the very top of the mountain. What if the spaceship was just at the base of the mountain? Tsurugi answered that according to what he knows, flying saucers always land at the very top at the peak of mountains. And since Tsurugi wasn't wearing any clothes here, Yuka's attention was once again drawn to the ring, but Tsurugi immediately said that he had no intention of returning the ring to Yuka for now. While saying that, just like his grandmother Maki, even though Maki was cast out and rejected by her own clan, she still proved that she was strong and never gave up. He also said that he wants to be like his grandmother Maki. And here, guys, it was as if a concept emerged about what was really going on between these two. One wants to become strong to obtain the ring. The other wants to become strong to return the ring to his sibling. Even though their perspectives are different, they actually share the same goal. And soon enough, just as the criminal said, exactly at 8 p.m. in this place, Nonax, the mothership of the Semurians, appeared and showed itself. It's huge, absolutely massive, guys. It's a rectangular shape, almost like a post, just floating there like a piece of wood. You'd never guess it's actually an alien spaceship. This is when the two finally believed. When they saw with their own eyes the spaceship of the aliens that the criminal was talking about. That's when they also realized how dangerous it was. Because if it really is a Sukuna level threat, these aliens are extremely powerful, especially if all 50,000 Semurians inside the Nonax can use the same type of sorcery power. They also understood and knew very well that if a Sukuna level threat like Sukuna himself was only defeated by the strongest sorcerers, including their grandparents Yuta and Maki. What now? They're gone. Who will take their place? Who will stop these aliens? So from here on, the two of them decided that they needed to become strong. They needed to become like Yuta Okotsu and Maki Zenin in order to stop this threat. Now guys, there will be a switching of scenes and we'll move on to Maru and his sibling Cross. There was a bit of chit-chat and conversation between the two of them. While Cross was explaining and asking Maru about his findings in his investigation, Maru answered very simply, very politely, saying that humans are just normal. Some Jujutsu sorcerers know how to use sorcery. There are good ones and there are bad ones. They can definitely live together with them. But Cross still really wants to continue the investigation and Maru's act of pretending. Maru then responded asking why bother. Cross replied that, in his opinion, Maru doesn't have the authority or nearly enough of the correct information to be the one to decide that it's suddenly okay for them to live together with the Earthlings. Because if the Simurians and the Earthlings don't match in their philosophies on what is right and wrong, they can't just choose to live together with them. If that's the case, their planned coexistence could turn into a conflict. That's why Maru gets involved here, saying that no matter what happens, they must never end up in conflict. So if Maru really wants to help, he should continue his investigation. He should keep gathering information so he can assist in the decision-making that the higher-ups of Simuria will have to do. And since Cross still hasn't returned to Nonax yet, Maru invited him, suggesting why don't they have breakfast together tomorrow? Because apparently he discovered a lot of delicious Japanese cuisines. But since his brother Cross is so serious or cold, he refused and said he was busy. The Okotsu siblings then returned to the Jujutsu headquarters and were about to go inside. But what happened here, guys, is that Tsurugi forgot his high school pass. That's why he can't just easily get inside the entrance. So while he was thinking and planning that he needed to relink his pass, he remembered what he and Yuka had talked about, confronting Maru about being an alien. He went to look for him outside and saw that he was staring, lost in thought, from the roof of the building. He approached Tsurugi and tried to talk to him. He explained that if Maru were to remain on the edge of the building like that, if people down below were to see him, they might mistakenly think he was about to jump and could even call the police. While teasing Maru, he asked what they call that term on another planet or on the planet where he came from. It was as if Tsurugi was indirectly confronting, indirectly triggering, and trying to confirm something with Maru. But he didn't expect Maru's answer. Maru replied, "Don't talk to me. Shut up and be quiet." And the reason why Maru's answer was so impolite and rude this time is because, guys, this isn't really Maru. You'll notice that the mark on his face is different and his hairstyle is different too. It's not like he's just wearing a hairband. His hair is actually tied up. This isn't Maru but his sibling Cross. It's as if for a brief moment they switched places, maybe so Cross could see for himself what Maru was referring to, what information Maru was talking about. That's the reason why Tsurugi got annoyed. But he wasn't able to get back at him because Cross suddenly left right after saying those words. And that's where chapter 2 ends, guys.